Yeah, welcome to today's Curators Tour and Artist Talk with Lauren Moffatt in the exhibition Resonant Realities. The exhibition shows the artworks of the 5 grant recipients of the VR Art Prize by DKB in cooperation with CAA Berlin. So last year in May, we made an open call for VR artists living in Germany to send in their works to apply for the VR Art Prize. And out of these 104 submissions we got, jury selected 5 positions, 5 artists, 5 artworks to be shown in an exhibition, and also to receive working grants for 4 months for last year. And we now see the outcome of this working grants by the grant recipients. And today I will give you a short tour in English and explain shortly the works by Evelyn Bencicova, by Armin, Keplinger, by Banz Bowinkel, by Patricia Detmering. And then Lauren Moffatt will be our guest. She's already in the Zoom. And with Lauren, we will talk more in depth about her installation and VR artwork, image technology echoes. Well, and before we do this, I will start now with the installation by Evelyn Bencicova, which she made together with Joris Demnar from Iconospace and Ariel Esther. And this installation consists of 5 monumental photographs hanging on a scaffolding, looking kind of floating in the air also. And on these 5 photographs, we see females in different social roles. The photos start chronologically, and we start with this work where we see a woman photographing herself in a kind of in a mirror. And here Evelyn, so all the works are very like open, and you can make your own suggestions and ideas of the meaning, of course. But here she also reflects the woman in the society, in social media, in front or behind the camera also, and who is being seen, who's being photographed, and what here is real or not real. And then another important topic of Evelyn's photographs is obedience, the subordination of women in a patriarchal society. And this is what we see in the photo here, photos left and right next to me. And then on the 4th photo, we see a woman contemplating in front of like a washing or machine to, you know, make the clothes real. Sorry, I don't know the English word, to, you know, flatten the clothes. And it's not, what's the right word, Lauren? Who said that? Well,
it wasn't me speaking, but it was, I think that it's some sort of clothes press, right?
Clothes press, yeah. Thank you so much, Lauren. Clothes press, and but the woman is not shown in the act of pressing clothes, but she is kind of contemplating. You see her in the act of thinking, maybe about what she's doing here, what the machine's doing there, and what are the roles of both. And we see that in our society, machines often are female, like Siri or Alexa. So when it comes to machines helping us and being obedient, subordinative, then they are usually displayed as female. And this is also what Evelyn talks about in her work. Well, and on the last photo, we see the woman close to a door, which she doesn't open here. She just, you know, maybe thinks about the possibility of opening the door and maybe creating a different narrative, a different situation for her in society. Well, and as Evelyn did not display this idea of the woman finding autonomy in her photographic series, she decided to make a virtual reality artwork together with Joris Demnar and Ariel Esther, where she transfers these images, the photographs, into new worlds, new CGI generated worlds. And Evelyn there has also the possibility to narrate the story of this woman, and to also add more scenes to what's happening to her. And the last scenes, which you will only see in virtual reality, is where she also gains autonomy. And we cannot show the VR artworks here today in videos, but if you, for example, check the video of the opening, you will find some sequences of the VR inside in this video, or also on the Instagram vrartprice.journal are also some images of the insides of the VR artworks. And now we are in the installation of Armin Keplinger. And Armin Keplinger, in his virtual work, which also consists of these it's very hard to see, obviously, but of these like small filigrane tubes or needle-like hollow shapes. So that's basically the basic form Armin conceives all his sculptures of the ND serial, of the series of sculptures here. And in physical reality, where I stand in, you see that these sculptures, these forms are tied to certain boundaries. Boundaries like the exhibition space, the sculpture goes from the ceiling to the floor, and therefore it cannot go further, obviously, because the space limits the sculpture. And also the sculpture consists of there are 4 sculptures, they consist of almost 400 tubes, which is already a lot of work to assemble them together to these beautiful sculptures. But yeah, when entering the other realm, the virtual realm, of course, all these boundaries don't apply anymore. And there Armin has the possibility to use his tube, to use his shape, his form, to build much different sculptures, to build really monumental sculptures, which are 30 meters high, which extend to like on a square of 30 by 30 meters, for example. It's also, you can't guess the dimensions, you just see that's a really monumental sculpture. Or his sculptures, they float in the exhibition space, all things that cannot be done in real life. And also for the viewer, it's a very different experience, because here, obviously, all we can do, right, is look closely or walk around the sculpture. But in virtual reality, we also have the chance to fly on top of this, to fly above the sculpture, and to go around it really quickly or really slowly in very different paces. And that what Armin is interested in these different ways of perceiving the virtual world and the physical reality, and thereby, of course, also finding new ways of how sculpture can be created in the virtual space. Okay, now we go to the installation of Banz Bowinkel. So here we have actually the chance to have a little look in the virtual world, because this huge screen next to me displays the life in the VR experience, Polymesh, by the artist duo Banz and Bowinkel. And well, it's very dark just in this first scene, because the avatars we see there, the bots, they just start their system, they start beginning to work. And in virtual reality, we enter a world where we meet these bots, these avatars, and they are visualizations of these bots or algorithms we usually encounter online, on the internet, on social media, but there usually we cannot see them, although they're highly guiding our own behavior on Instagram, for example. They tell us they decide what we see, basically, and what we don't see. And here in this world, Polymesh by Banz Bowinkel, we encounter these avatars, and we see the system they work in. We see the system they work in, they do their job. And here in the second scene of this it's like a play of 7 stages here. Here they start working. And also, if I would be wearing a headset now, they would recognize me. They would come to me and ask me who I am, like this maybe, like who I am, what I would be taught, what I am doing there. So they would also get in touch with me, and I can witness what they actually do in these levels. And then later on, these avatars will also talk with each other, actually, which they never really did before. They will also start questioning what they do here in the system and what is real and what was maybe in their lives before. And yeah, the whole setting of the installation. Anja, if you can go back a little, that we can see the yellow floor also. Yeah, well, yeah, that's great. So what we can see here is that Banz Bowinkel, they created a kind of test setting, a setting in the black and yellow colors, which we know from the crash tests usually, which are made when cars are tested. And we build like these dummies, human-like avatars that are in the cars, and we see what's happening to these machine-like humans when the car crashes. So this is kind of like inside VR and also outside a kind of experimental zone. What's happening when humans and machines collide also. And now we go to the installation of Patricia Detmering. Wait, give me a second. Sorry, I'm back in a second, don't worry. Just need to switch the light off. So here we are in an installation of the artist Patricia Detmering called Aporia. And next to me, you see also a projection of the virtual reality world that Patricia created. But when you enter VR, you see it from a very different viewpoint. You would then sit here in the world underneath the tree next to the seaside on a rock, which is very similar to this one, which you see here in the exhibition space. And all the elements you see in Patricia's world are all based on watercolors. The artist painted and then transferred and animated them in the virtual world and reassembled them, rearranged them to create this world, which you can see here. Well, in Aporia, that's like a village. There are living like several, let's say, people, abstract avatars also. And these avatars are they just basically do their daily activities. They are all individuals programmed to do their daily tasks. And some of them are more like following some rules of order, and others react more open-minded. And depending on these individuals form in these groups, they would, appoint a leader, which leads then whole group of people. So Aporia is very much about how individuals influence group dynamics or dynamics of masses. And you, as a viewer, you can only you can witness it, but you are also kind of intruder, similar to your role in the VR piece of Banz Bowinkel. You're an intruder, and these avatars here, they would come to you. Maybe they talk to you, or maybe what they do is they build maybe a wall around you because, yeah, you're a foreigner, right? And building walls is a thing that is very much inherited in mankind, it seems. Building walls to exclude others is a tradition that, of course, in Berlin we have witnessed in other regions of the world, also still today, but also have been in the past. Also, there are Persian myths about building walls around the Yajuj and Majuj, who should be like kept out. And what Patricia says with her work is that these kind of dynamics and the behavior of humans is nothing that happens just at one point of time. It basically happens all the time throughout history, but will also most likely be happening throughout the future also. And there is no kind of solution for it. There are just different possibilities, and we can explore these possibilities and learn about these possibilities. And that's what Patricia shows us in her installation, Aporia. Okay, now we go to Lauren Moffatt. Lauren, are you here?
Yes, can you hear me?
Perfect, yes, we can hear you. We will enter your installation. Maybe we can make a short stop. I don't know if we can see it so well. Yeah, you can barely see it, unfortunately, but we have a great, wait, maybe it's better if I switch the light completely off. Yeah, it's not possible that we can really see it, but we have a slide projection here in the entrance of Lauren's installation. And we have many more works inside of the installation here. And Lauren, how are you today?
I'm good, thanks.
Good,
so that's a close-up of one of the slides behind me in my background here. Just to give a bit of an understanding of what you see on that wall when we're not dealing with these kind of live video circumstances.
Thank you so much, Lauren. But that's also part of the World Image Technology Echoes, right? So we can already dive right in. What do we see on the projection? What is it? Which kind of slides are you showing there?
There is a series of 80 slides that I painted on glass by hand. So I sort of started with a blank glass slide and then sort of painted these images. Sort of most of them are portraits or landscapes or images of hands, but there are also some animals. Mm-hmm. And these images, they're kind of on a 3-minute slideshow in the exhibition. And they also appear on the wall inside one of the interior sort of rooms of the characters, because in this piece you're able to actually enter this sort of subjective space of the characters that you encounter, which appears as actually a room with different objects and different images that have their own sort of specific behaviors that sort of give clues about who these people are. Right. So this is on the wall of the man's interior space in the piece.
So the thing is, how we want to do it is we want to first show you all these elements you see here in the physical space more in detail and talk about them. And later on, you will all encounter these paintings and objects and sculptures in the virtual world. And the virtual world, it consists of 3 spaces, right, Lauren? There is can you tell us again maybe about the 3 spaces also that we will later encounter in virtual reality, so that the viewers already have heard that before we talk about the elements here in the exhibition space?
Right. So when you enter the VR, when you first launch it, you enter a sort of museum space, like a gallery space, mm-hmm. with 2 people standing inside it. And they're standing together and speaking to each other. And they also look a little bit strange because they were captured using a 3D, like a moving image 3D scan technique, which is still very experimental and still in development. And this kind of created some sort of special glitches that give a very particular kind of aesthetic to this piece, which I think also fits with the story that I'm trying to tell. So I'm quite happy about the glitches, actually. But you arrive in something that looks a little bit like what's behind me. And then if you actually physically step into one of these people, then you get projected into their interior mind space, which sort of looks a little bit like this in the woman's case. All around the room, there are sort of images and sculptures, and there's some furniture around as well. Pretty much everything in terms of textures that's inside is something that I've drawn or painted or sort of created using some sort of manual technique. you know, and the sculptures in the case of the sculptures, they've sort of been 3D scanned using photogrammetry and placed inside. And so, yeah, each time you step inside somebody's body, so if you're inside in a subjective space, you can step inside that person's, you know, kind of character, who's also seen inside the interior space, and then you are projected back out into the gallery space. And yeah,
Right.
the only
no, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to add that it's kind of important that when you're inside each of the interior spaces from the characters, they have windows at the side where their eyes would be in a head, and through the windows you see what's going on in the gallery through their eyes. But in each case, it looks different from how you encountered it just now in the gallery. Like what you perceived is different from how each of them perceives it. And this is also telling a little bit about how they're experiencing this world. So this is the view through the window from the woman's interior space, where she's kind of experiencing the whole room as if it were a painting, as if it were this painting. And she's sort of floating through it.
Well, okay. Maybe since you've been talking like a lot about the virtual space now, maybe we should just play the video first, maybe before we talk about the sculptures in the space. Maybe it's better this way around. And yeah, as Lauren already explained, you will witness 3 spaces. In one of them, the younger woman and the older man talk to each other, and then you will enter the headspaces of these persons. And Peggy, may I ask you to play the video? Thank you so much.
Strangely stood inspired, the happy oil of smile, the pure woman behind me, very still as an auteur. Her skirts around things, the way she can fake capable. And then all are, look almost, girl, you're real.
Yeah, Tina, but love.
Yes. Capable. Almost accomplished.
Accomplished.
Yes. This one works for me.
Collapsing. Goes behind him and back, disappeared. Down to the car, with mouths closed. The breathwork is very...
Yeah, thank you so much, Peggy. Yeah, maybe we talk about these 3 different spaces we saw in the video. And the first space we enter, Lauren, is the museum space, right? What kind of museum space is it, and what are the 2 protagonists looking at actually?
Well, the museum space is actually quite large. You're able to see that there are some different floors and lots of different exhibitions happening. And it's also, the space that you're in is also empty other than these 2 people. And they're looking at a painting of a stormy sea, you know, sort of a, you know, landscape, like a seascape image that looks quite big and quite expressive.
Sorry, Lauren. Yeah. It's big and it's expressive. I just was pointing to the picture next to me, but then you will come to this point anyway. So sorry.
Okay. So do you want me to keep on talking about it?
Yes, yes, please. I was, yeah.
Okay,
I want.
So that painting, the painting that you encounter in the VR is actually the painting that you see next to Tina here. I made a scan of it and then kind of made it much, I scaled it up in digital space, which made the brush marks look like, you know, really like they had a lot of relief, and like the gestures were really, you know, kind of expressive gestures, you know, like something from Turner or something similar. But actually it's quite a small sort of, you know, not very, you know, like kind of like a domestic size painting actually in reality. And actually, I'm just going to use this as a segue to start talking about the next series of paintings. Like behind me, this is a close-up of some of the painting, like of the painting that Tina's standing next to. And I use a series of these sort of close-up images that I took of the painting to create a series of normal maps, which I then repainted. And just to explain what a normal map is, it's a specific type of image file that that gives the software information about the way that shadows should appear. And it's used often in video games because it's a way to kind of save on computing power, because you're able to make really low, really like, you know, meshes with a lot of polygons look like they have a lot of polygons, even if they've got less. It's a way to make, you know, low poly meshes look like they've got more poly, sorry. So I'm just going to show what a close-up of that looks like behind me.
But
so
it's
this,
like, I don't, because I have a different image. That's because I'm also standing next to these paintings, right, Lauren? Can you see?
So the painted image close-up, if you got really close to it, it'd look like what's behind me on my screen here. And each of the pink and the blue and the green and the yellow, I think it is, and the green, they all kind of give information about the way that this geometry should appear. So I repainted these things and then kind of refed them into the software and made this kind of these surfaces in the painted inside room for the woman appear in a certain type of specific way that I found interesting. So you can see just behind me through the windows here, again, this same video that I was showing before, this is where I use these maps. So in case you're visiting the exhibition and you're wondering how those paintings work in the VR, you'll see if you look really closely that even though the colors aren't the same in the surfaces in the woman's sort of painted inner room, that you'll see that there are these kind of shapes, like a kind of relief on some of the surfaces that matches what you see on those paintings. And so they're a kind of strange way of actually speaking in a poetic way with the computer in order to create something specific in the virtual environment that I found quite interesting.
Yeah, so we kind of look onto something the computer would create to display surfaces of objects, right. But in a way where you have painted it in the physical realm, right?
Yeah.
Would you say it like this? Yes.
More or less, yeah. It's kind
more
of,
or less.
Yeah, it's, without getting too technical, I find these images really interesting because there's something that we don't actually see. It's a little bit like what with Banz Bowinkel, that there are all of these sort of processes going on in the background with computing that are actually quite poetic in a lot of ways, and they reflect a lot of ways the way that we as humans perceive things and sort of think about things, because computers are human tools, but they're often unseen. And it was sort of a way of kind of bringing some of these things that I find quite poetic when I'm working with digital tools into the foreground.
Yeah, it's very poetic. And yeah, I don't know, like for me as an art historian, it's so interesting that, you know, painting very much during the centuries was about creating illusions of three-dimensionality and space on a two-dimensional surface. And it's basically the same thing, how still, of course, computers like to say it more basic, also generate the idea of surfaces or these illusionary spaces. So it's actually very similar, which I like a lot also.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's an interesting way to look at it as well.
Yeah, well, then let's proceed to another installation.
Yeah.
You're so well prepared. I love that, Lauren.
It was a little bit improvised just before we started.
Well, yeah, and here we are in front of a really huge, like, how high is it? Like 250, 240 high charcoal and Kreide, what's the English word?
Chalk. Like charcoal
and chalk drawing. I think you can see it quite well, which you can also see it in Lauren's background, consists of different papers, so they're all tied together in a knots basically, and on top of this is, and all these areas are floating on top of the wall. These are not really attached to the wall, they're floating on top, and these drawings by Lauren also float on top of the other drawings here in the space. Lauren, what are they about and where do we find them in virtual reality?
So these are also in the woman's interior space. This wall is seen very similar to its kind of dimensions in the exhibition behind, on the back wall of the woman's room. This was actually another work that I created with the grant that we received at the end of last year. And this was kind of a possibility for me to deepen this sort of sense of being immersed inside a gesture, or immersed inside a type of gesture, which also for me transmits a certain type of emotion, without revealing also too much about, because I'd really like for people to sort of make their own decisions about what they're seeing inside the piece. But I'm really interested in this sort of art therapy technique of sort of drawing emotions as maps, and I sort of use this to, this kind of idea as a point of departure to try and make a map of the way that this woman is feeling. So that's probably as much as I'd like to say about that, because like I say, I don't want to give out everything.
Okay, yeah. Right. Yeah, what I may add, which is my own interpretation maybe also, but it looks very stormy, right? It's black and white, and looks very stormy, and also the main image, the two persons looking at in a museum space, it's a painting of a stormy sea. So this whole notion is I think very important of this whole installation also.
Yeah, like there's some sort of turbulence or something.
Turbulence, right?
Yeah.
And do you want to talk about these a little, or is it also maybe leave it open for interpretation?
Well, yeah. The thing is, these were some of the oldest elements that you can find in the installation. I think, along with the slides and the sculpture, which I suppose we're going to see in a moment. These works are actually, some of them are almost 20 years old. I think this one I did maybe 16 years ago, and it was an attempt to reproduce a child's writing, but kind of scaling it up and sort of making really fine sort of graphite marks to try and reproduce this haphazard way that children write. And I found it interesting in this installation, because I really wanted to bring to the forefront as well, like the sort of games of scale that are in the kind of transfer between physical and digital. So yeah, this piece already has it in the original version, like this kind of idea of scaling something up and giving it a different meaning that way. And so I found it interesting to use those drawings, but actually it was there are a lot of other elements that we could have used in the installation.
Right, there have been a lot of other elements.
Really lots.
That's true. But I really love that we decided for these two elements, and I love the way how we install it also. And for me, I love it also personally, because it has so much to do with this unconsciousness in us, you know, that is the map of emotions. It's like bringing out visual ideas of the unconsciousness also in this drawing of a child, you know, maybe a child that just learns writing and doesn't understand really the notions of the letters or so. And also there's this idea of the inner child and psychology, you know, it's all which is in us unconsciously all the time. And
Right.
I love that a lot about the installation. So I think you made a good choice. But of course we have more elements, right?
Right.
Yeah, because you were saying that many of or not many, but some of the works are dating back some years. Also, this installation that we see here, right, with the laptop and the painting on the laptop and the sculpture of the female ape. Right, Lauren? Maybe we can talk a little about this.
Yeah, this one also appears, you can see it like it's lit quite dramatically, but you can see it just behind me. It also appears in the woman's room. And it's actually just as a clue for people who manage to see this exhibition. I hope that it manages to open when in a non-lockdown time so people can experience it. But actually, just as a clue, if you go quite close to the monkey in the piece, then you'll find something.
Well,
like a little hidden story. But yeah, this was a piece that I also made around somewhere between 10 and 15, probably more like 12 or 13 years ago. And it was at a time when I was thinking a lot about femininity and the way that I was expressing my own femininity and the way that I felt compelled to do that from society and the way that I was actually experiencing it. And it sort of came out in these two works that I then decided to show together for this exhibition, which are sort of on the one hand, the monkey is sort of made with paper mache and also with kind of PVA glue that I put on my skin and then peeled off. So it's kind of got the relief of my skin on it. And it's also got makeup. The face is painted with makeup. And this is sort of some sort of expression about this sort of slight maybe discomfort I had with myself at this time, and also the way that I was sort of experiencing shyness about femininity and about the way that I was supposed to be as a woman, which I sort of found at the same time absurd, you know, because and yeah, the computer is sort of showing again, like it's sort of showing these images of women that are sort of, what would you say, like impersonal in a way, because their faces are replaced by flowers, like they're orchids, their faces, and they're sort of dancing and wearing sort of knee-high boots and sort of short shorts and singlets and so on. And there's something quite sexual about this image at the same time as being quite surreal. And yeah, I guess this was also made at the beginnings of this time when you know, so much of our culture was online, and so I was thinking about sexuality and the way that was portrayed in online life,
online and offline life.
Yeah.
Right. Thanks so much, Lauren. Well, also one thing that interests me is because you're working with maps a lot, and it seems you like the idea of maps and what they could actually mean, or how they can be displayed or shown, or how they can be created. Is this a thing what interests you in particular?
Yeah, I find maps interesting because on the one hand, my practice for a really long time has been about portraying some sort of subjective view, you know, or trying to recreate the way that I see things really from inside my body. And I find that maps are an interesting counterpoint to that because they are so objective. You know, it's like the difference between walking through a forest and seeing it from a plane, you know. There's some sort of there's something interesting that I find about the juxtaposition of that. And also for me, I find maps so pleasant to look at because they show everything on the same level, you know. And,
That's true.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Lauren. Well, on one aspect we didn't talk about yet is the aspect of communication. So also this exhibition, Resonant Realities, is of course about how like the digital and the virtual realm resonate in each other, but it's also about how how individuals actually resonate in each other, and this usually happens by communication and exchange. That the way we see the world can only be talked about when we talk about, and so this kind of resonance of individual realities plays also a very big role in your work, because we have these two protagonists, which we saw, the older man and the younger woman standing in front of the painting, and they talk about the painting, but it's also really hard to understand them. What are they saying actually? And yeah.
Yeah, there's so in the gallery, the two of them are having quite an almost awkwardly academic conversation about the painting. You know, they're talking about it in quite an objective way that's almost silly. You know, how objective they're being about it. And then at some point that sort of gets broken through by there's a sort of outburst, and it doesn't really make sense what's said at that point. And after some time, perhaps, of kind of going between the different rooms, you could put together some sort of idea of what that could have been. But actually, it's also okay for me if people experience it just as something that's slightly absurd and out of nowhere, you know.
Well, there's one thing, for example, one sentence the woman says is, "This brushwork is very capable." And then the man says, "Yes, capable, almost accomplished." And this is like a sentence, it sounds absurd also because like these adjectives are usually kind of for humans, right? Maybe not so much for paintings, right? I don't, why did you choose these words?
I guess I was trying to create a sort of a kind of discussion that is a little bit like this. You know, it's supposed to be about something objective, but then it seems like it could be something that goes a little bit deeper and is talking about something that is unseen in this place. And yeah. Those were the words that I chose. I've heard them a million times now, working on the piece so many times. And yeah, that was sort of the intention behind that. And I suppose it's also necessary to say that when you go inside the rooms of inside the inner spaces of the two characters, there's they each have a monologue. They're sort of speaking quite cryptically in sort of little short phrases that make some sense and they sound interesting, but they don't exactly talk about anything that we can see, and they're actually a little bit confusing, if anything, about what's going on. But both of the characters are sort of saying them with certain expressions on their face and certain emotions that could reveal something about what they're feeling. And those what they're saying in the interior spaces, I wrote those texts with the collaboration of an artificial with the deep writing framework. So an artificial intelligence essentially gave me a series of texts that I could choose from, and then I sort of put them together using that. And this was again talking a little bit about the way that computing and the kind of intelligence behind computers is reflecting human intelligence, I suppose, and how I'm really interested in exploring that in my work. And it was also just the most economic way for me to get the type of text that I needed, you know. So I chose a series of authors and a series of texts that I wanted to use to create this character's inner life. And then the artificial intelligence sort of scrambled it up and then gave me back this package of texts that I could then re-curate myself. So it was kind of like another interesting exchange or an interesting communication that's inside the piece.
Right, so the protagonist in the museum space the text you wrote by yourself, right? It's not like an AI text, but text the two say in their own like headspaces in the inner worlds, they are AI generated. Yeah, and that's the thing, we witness this conversation between these two in a museum space, and it's hard to understand sometimes, and it's hard to grasp the sense of it. And I think that's a very important notion of how communication sometimes, or how difficult communication can be sometimes. And I also would like to talk a little about the headspace. I have some quotes here on my notes, what the man says. For example, the marble repose of sleep, lowly warmth, through the morning's shoulders, lo, how an aged starry magistrate blackens, gives naught but sublime. I hope I pronounce it correctly. So it's already very cryptic to me, and also, I mean, I'm not a native speaker, but it's not so much about these words, it's more about the notion, the feelings that are expressed with these words and how the man says them, right? Did I understand this correctly?
Yeah. I mean, there are some, you know, like the part about sleep, for instance, the part about, you know, this lowly warmth through to the morning shoulders, that he's kind of, both of these characters are in a place where they don't really know where they are, and it's for different reasons. You know, they're trying to figure out who they are as people, but for very different reasons. And in the man's case, it's sort of it's very much linked to memory. And yeah, again, without going into too much depth about it, it's the text. Somehow, when I was reading these texts that I kind of received, you know, the text that I got from this that I was sort of looking for things that resonated with what I was feeling about these characters that I was trying to produce, well, that already existed, but I was looking for a container for them, you know.
Yeah.
So somehow it rings true with me, but I'm not sure what visitors are getting from it.
Cool. Thank you so much, Lauren. Well, I would say we open it up for questions now, also from the audience. Please raise your hand or write it in the chat. Are there any questions? No, no questions. So
excuse
well,
me.
Yeah. Yeah. Hello.
Yeah, it's Sepide speaking. I would be interested in the kind of artificial intelligence you used to create the words or the sentences or the stories. What kind of AI was it?
I was using a recurrent neural network, and I was using some libraries from like TensorFlow and Python to I was kind of making these data sets which were basically just really long texts, and then it would sort of think about it for a while, and then it would spit out a bunch of text for me.
Okay, and did they resonate with you? So you found them quite fitting to the idea you wanted to transmit?
Well, I needed to sort what I got, you know. It wasn't sort of like everything just sort of came out and was magically what you have in the piece. There was a lot of nonsense in between.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
Yeah, it was really, you know, I got quite a lot of text in order to kind of make these 16 lines or however many lines it was. So it was really just a tool. I was using it. It was definitely not the most intelligent of artificial intelligences, but it made me want to play with it more. But it was really just a tool. It was a way for me as a writer to sort of get out of this expositional type of writing that I was veering towards with what I had before. And yeah, it was the best. It was definitely the best for the work. I think it was a really good choice to have gone that way.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
And then we had a question of Mara to walk around a little. I would just switch positions, Mara. I hope that You can see maybe Lauren's installation a little bit better again from the side we've already been talking about, and we also go like a little closer to the sculpture again, Mara, so that you can also see them again. And are there other questions?
Thank you so much for this amazing talk, super interesting. I wanted to ask whether you feel that sort of this lockdown and pandemic situation has sort of changed the course of your work, or has brought different topics to the fore.
I think if any, I think it's a good question, actually. I think it's made a series of things have made people very interested in what I do in a way that's quite different from before. And I wonder a little bit whether that's also partly because of the fact that all of these lockdowns and all of this confinement has meant that people are spending more time with themselves, and that they're maybe a little bit more reflective about their inner life than things were, you know, a year and a half ago. For me personally, I think that it was really actually quite good, you know. I feel really lucky to be saying that, but it meant that I was just in my studio for months and months and was able to just focus on what I was doing. And because of the circumstances, I was able to do pretty much everything from my studio, which was just amazing. So I think that I've become in many ways more confident over the last year with some parts of my process, just because I didn't have anything else to do other than concentrate on them, you know.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for the question.
There's another question by Anemone. Hello, Anemone. How much time do you spend? No, I don't see it anymore. How much time do you spend on, besides computer, working on the sculptures and paintings?
It depends on the project, but I try and fight to keep it at least half-half. This direction in my work that I'm using a lot of you know, manual techniques and making physical objects that I then digitize. It was because the work that I was doing previously required me to be on a computer all the time and to be kind of immersing myself in the computer and not getting any exercise, not getting any other sensory input other than what was on my desk and what was right in front of me. And I found that I really missed that. And so I try and keep it half-half. I mean, there's a lot of admin that I have to do as well. So that also keeps me at the computer. But I think in terms of the actual creation, it's probably 1/3 admin, 1/3 painting, drawings, you know, kind of physical prototyping, and 1/3 computing, because there's quite a big, the way that I'm working also requires quite a lot of time using 3D modeling software. But yeah, I mean, me too. I'm much happier now than I was 6 years ago. Trust me. Yeah.
Thanks, Lauren. Thanks, Anemone, for the question. Are there more questions, comments?
This is Emma.
Did you read it?
Yes, Emma Shapiro is asking, does this piece continue to inspire you? Are you finding new meanings in it as time goes on? And that's actually a really interesting question, because you know, I'm just about to show this piece in another exhibition that will probably take place during the opening time of this exhibition, and I will probably make a new iteration of the installation, and I'll probably add some components to the VR artwork. And so in that way that it keeps on taking on new parts of it as well, that it grows along the way each time it's shown, that it's shown in a slightly different way. maybe gets a couple of new physical elements. So for instance, for this show, I'll need to make another 80 slides, and all of these 80 slides will have been made this year, which will change the way that the inside of the space works. And I find that this is something that is really great about working in, I guess, in a technique of creation that is adjacent to video games, you know, that instead of making one artwork and then making another artwork, you can make an artwork and then also kind of make new versions of it and make new kind of change it by increments each time you're showing it. And I find that really interesting, you know, that it's also that artworks just never finish, you know, that they can continue to grow and to change as you go along the way. And so, yeah, the answer is yes, it does continue to inspire me, and I'm finding new meanings in it. And also, obviously, each time I show it, with each new individual that I'm able to talk to about their experience with it, I understand it from a slightly different viewpoint, because there's just so much stuff in there that even I don't have an overview of it anymore. And yeah, again, it's a subjective thing, you know, everybody perceives things in a slightly different way, and there may be some things that are visible to some people that aren't visible to others, which is also really interesting about virtual reality, because it is so immersive.
Yeah, and it's also very subjective, you know, everyone perceives the work from their own standpoint, and it kind of shows differently for everyone, and it's always everyone discovers different things. It's not a film in front of you, you're really immersed, and it's always kind of a different version for every viewer also.
Yeah,
I think that's also interesting.
Yeah, and each person moves around in it in a different way, and you know, each person has a different rhythm with the way that they explore things. It's really interesting to see that and to kind of share it with an audience.
Very, very much.
Yeah.
Is there a last question, maybe?
Yes, please. I have one.
Go ahead.
Referring to your answer that you gave right now, is it possible for you to learn about the way that the people move through the experience? Because I already saw the exhibition and I went through this experience, and I was wondering if you can learn something about the way that different people approach the scene when they change from the male character to the female character, or how they maybe look around in a different way. Is it possible for you to know how they move around?
You mean when I'm physically there next to the person who's visiting the exhibition, or?
No, maybe afterwards as well. Is it possible to, in a way, learn from the computer or the experience how people move around in your experience and how they perceive things?
Well, it would be possible. I don't have anything like that on the exhibition computer in the show. I know that there are research projects about this, about the types of things that people are interested in, where they want to look when they're in certain environments. And I find that sort of research really interesting. I guess if I were to put that in one of my works, I would let people maybe know about it. I'm not sure. If
I guess so.
I would find it interesting to know, because
I mean, I really like, when I have the opportunity to do it, I really like being with the work and being able to kind of be there when people are experiencing it and explaining it to them a little bit beforehand, which is sometimes the case at festivals. But you know, that I'll be around and I'll be able to talk to people and see how they're working with it. And it really brings me so much. Like, it gives me so many ideas also for other works that I could do that are based on something small that somebody experienced inside. You know, for instance, this piece, the whole thing about moving between the spaces by stepping inside of people, that came from another artwork that I showed a few years ago, where, you know, the people were kind of walking through these pre-made rigs, and, you know, obviously inside they're empty and so on, but people were telling me how scary that was for them, and how they felt it through their whole bodies, that they were walking through a person. And some people said that they even saw a skeleton or something. Okay. And this wasn't supposed to be the central part of that piece. It was supposed to be something political about about some prisons in Cameroon. And it was just, but that just sort of clicked for me that this could be something really interesting to exploit and turn into its own universe. This this idea of that kind of physicality that you can have.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, it was a nice experience. I liked it.
Oh, thanks. Thanks for visiting the show. Thank you.
Okay. Then I would say thank you to everyone who visited, who came visiting today. And of course, big thank you, Lauren, to you. Thank you for being here with us and telling us so much about your great installation and VR work, Image Technology Echoes. It was a pleasure to have you here. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Tina. Thanks for the tour as well.
Thanks. Yeah, and for everyone listening, there will of course be more online events during the show. Unfortunately, at the moment we are on lockdown, but we hope to open soon again. And meanwhile, I recommend our online events. And of course, next Friday on the 7th of May, there is a big award ceremony. So there will be a VR art prize. Actually 3 VR art prizes awarded to 3 of the 5 artists of the show. So this will surely be a very exciting event next Friday at 7 p.m. Also again here, live from Haus am Lützow-Platz, of course. Okay, thank you so much, and I wish you all a great evening. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Lauren.
Thank you.